There was a time when TV comedy was, well, nice. It was polite. But then the 70s happened, and everything changed. We're going to explore the revolutionary decade when the sitcom grew up, stopped just trying to make you laugh, and actually started trying to say something about the world.
So to really get what a huge deal this was, you got to look at what came before, right? 60s TV comedy was all about pure escapism. I'm talking Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, really charming shows for sure, but they were built on magic and total make-believe. Then, the 70s just slammed the door on all of that. I mean, after a decade of social upheaval, war, political scandals, audiences were just tired of pretending. All of a sudden, comedy had to be about grounded reality. It got messy, it got loud, and it started to look a whole lot like the world right outside your front door.
And that's really the crucial point here. The goal wasn't just to distract you for 30 minutes anymore. No way. The 70s sitcom wanted to talk to you, to challenge you, and to hold up a mirror to all the complicated issues of the day. It made comedy actually matter.
So how'd they do it? Well, it all started by basically taking the sitcom rulebook and throwing it out the window. These shows didn't just nudge the boundaries, they caused full-on comedic earthquakes.
Let's start with a scene from the Mary Tyler Moore Show that so many people say is the single funniest moment in the history of television. The episode has this perfect title, Chuckles Bites the Dust. The whole episode builds to this one deeply uncomfortable question. See, Mary spends the entire time scolding her friends for making jokes about the absurd death of a local TV clown. But then, when she actually gets to the funeral, the tables get turned completely. And it's the eulogy that finally breaks her. The minister is up there, dead serious, listing off all of Chuckles' goofy character names. And when he gets to a little song, a little dance, a little seltzer down your pants, that's it. Mary tries to stifle a laugh, it turns into a sputter, and then a full-blown, uncontrollable giggle fit in a silent church. It was absolutely groundbreaking because it dared to find profound humor in grief and total inappropriateness. Next up, we have All in the Family, a show that didn't just tiptoe around prejudice, it ran straight at it. And in one of its most famous episodes, the one and only Sammy Davis Jr. finds himself in the living room of America's most famous bigot, Archie Bunker. This scene is just an unforgettable cultural moment. After putting up with Archie's ignorant comments the entire episode, Sammy Davis Jr. asks for a picture. And right as that camera flashes, he leans in and kisses Archie square on the cheek. The studio audience just erupts in one of the longest, loudest laughs in TV history, and it completely silences Archie. For that one perfect moment, you could say comedy defeated prejudice. But listen, it wasn't just about tackling controversial topics. The real revolution was in how the jokes were told. In the 70s, the joke wasn't the wacky situation anymore. The joke was the character reacting to it. Okay, take this legendary line from WKRP in Cincinnati. So after a Thanksgiving promotion goes horribly wrong, we're talking live turkeys being dropped from a helicopter, the station manager comes back in, total shock. This punchline is hilarious not just because it's a funny line, but because it perfectly captures his character. He's this eternally well-meaning but clueless guy whose confidence always outran his common sense. And here's another perfect example from the show Taxi. The gang is trying to help the spaced-out Reverend Jim pass his driving test. They ask him, what does a yellow light mean? He just doesn't get it, so they keep repeating the question slower and slower to give him a hint. And what does he do? He just repeats their slow cadence right back at them, thinking that's the answer. The humor comes directly from his wonderfully fried brain. And who could forget the Fonz? The entire foundation of his character was being effortlessly cool. So on those rare occasions he actually had to admit he was wrong, he physically couldn't do it. The comedy was watching the coolest guy on the planet literally short-circuit while trying to say one simple word. The whole gag was rooted completely in his identity. And you see this pattern everywhere. The humor of the Jeffersons, it was George's massive ego getting deflated by his wisecracking maid, Florence, every single week. On Barney Miller, it was Detective Fish's bone-deep exhaustion clashing with all the bizarre criminals. And on MHS, Hawkeye's cynical wit was the only thing shielding him from the horrors of war. The comedy was just baked right into their DNA. All right, now let's look at a show that took this whole character-driven idea and basically strapped a rocket to it. Mork and Mindy didn't just break the mold. It felt like it was from a different planet entirely, and that was all thanks to one singular chaotic talent.
This is absolutely fascinating to me. The writers of Mork and Mindy knew they had lightning in a bottle with Robin Williams. So instead of trying to contain him, which, let's be real, was impossible, they would literally just write "Mork does his thing" right into the script. This just unleashed a force of nature, letting him improvise wildly and totally reshape what a sitcom could even be.
Robin Williams' physicality created a completely new comedic language. You'd ask Mork to take a seat, he'd plant his head on the chair. You'd offer him a drink, he'd absorb it through his finger. And of course, there was the iconic Nanu Nanu. These weren't just jokes, they were these bizarre, unforgettable signatures that became instant playground crazes all across the country. And then, in just a stroke of pure genius, the show cast the comedy legend Jonathan Winters, who was Robin Williams' own personal hero, to play Mork's son, who, because he was an alien, was born as a middle-aged man. So their scenes together were just pure improv chaos. It was less of a scripted sitcom and more like a heavyweight comedy match between two masters just trying to make each other break.
So what's the lasting impact of this golden era? Why are we still talking about these shows all these decades later? The legacy is crystal clear. These shows proved that sitcoms could tackle real-world issues. They taught us that the absolute best humor comes from deeply flawed, relatable characters. They found laughs in tragedy, they broke the format with improv, and they turned the 30-minute comedy into a vital part of the national conversation. I mean, they basically wrote the playbook for nearly every great sitcom that followed, from Seinfeld and Friends all the way to The Office and Fleabag. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. The shows of the 70s were brave. They took huge risks. They reflected their time. So the question is, what show today is doing the same? What's the defining sitcom of our generation that's pushing those boundaries and making comedy matter?